Vexthari stared at the data screen in front of him. His long fingers moved across the control panel as he pulled up another species file. Working at the Zethkari research station was usually boring. Day after day, he studied alien races for the Galactic Union's database. Most species were predictable. Warriors fought. Traders sold things. Scholars studied, but humans were different. Vexthari opened their file again. He had read it many times before, but something about these creatures kept drawing his attention. The humans had joined the Galactic Union only 50 years ago. In cosmic terms, that was like yesterday. Most species took hundreds of years to even understand space travel. Humans had gone from flying in metal tubes to building starships in just a few decades. The classification system was simple. Category 1 meant extremely dangerous. Avoid contact. Category 2 was dangerous but manageable. Category 3 species were neutral. Category 4 meant peaceful and safe. Humans were Category 4. This confused Vexthari. His people, the Zethkari, were known throughout the galaxy for their logical minds. They could analyze any situation and predict outcomes with high accuracy. But humans didn't fit normal patterns. According to the files, humans had never started a war since joining the Union, not once. When other species had conflicts with them, humans always chose to talk instead of fight. They gave up territory rather than shed blood. They paid high taxes to avoid disputes. Other races often called them weak. Vexthari pulled up a video from last year's trade summit. He watched Ambassador Chen Wei-Lin, the human representative, speaking to the council. A Braktor warrior had insulted humanity, calling them soft meat that trembles at shadows. Ambassador Chen had simply smiled and offered to buy the Braktor's clan a drink. The other species had laughed. Even Vexthari's own people had found it amusing. Here was a species that could travel between stars, but couldn't stand up for themselves. But something bothered Vexthari about that moment. He replayed the video in slow motion. When the Braktor had insulted humans, Ambassador Chen's smile never wavered. His hands never shook. His breathing stayed perfectly steady. For someone who was supposed to be weak and emotional, the human had shown remarkable control. Vexthari made a note in his research log. Human emotional responses did not match expected patterns. He would need to study this more. The research station orbited Nexus Prime, a neutral world where all species could trade safely. From his window, Vexthari could see hundreds of ships from dozens of different worlds. Zethkari vessels with their crystal hulls, Braktor warships covered in spikes, merchant ships from the Velnari Collective, and there, docked at Platform 7, was a human vessel. It looked like a simple cargo ship. Smooth white hull, no weapons visible, small crew. The humans called it Morning Star. They used it to transport medical supplies to colonies that needed help, free of charge. This was another thing that confused Vexthari. Humans often gave away resources without asking for anything in return. They built hospitals on alien worlds. They shared their technology freely. They sent food to planets suffering from natural disasters. No other species did this without expecting something back. Vexthari's colleague, Zoomdar, entered the observation room. His crystalline skin sparkled under the lights. "Still studying the humans?" Zoomdar asked. "Yes. Their behavior patterns are unusual." Zoomdar made a sound that was the Zethkari version of laughing. "They're simple creatures. Emotional. Weak. There's nothing unusual about prey animals trying to avoid predators. But they're not prey animals," Vexthari said. "Look at their technology. They went from chemical rockets to faster-than-light travel in 100 years. Most species take 1,000 years to make that jump. So they're good at copying other species' work." "No." Vexthari pulled up another file. "Their technology is completely original. They solve problems in ways no one else has ever thought of. Their medical advances have saved millions of lives across the galaxy. Their engineering designs are so efficient that other species are still trying to understand how they work." Zoomdar looked at the data. "Then why don't they defend themselves?" That's what I'm trying to figure out. Vexathari had been studying humans for 3 years now. He had watched hundreds of hours of footage. He had read every report about human behavior. He had even interviewed some humans who visited the station. They were always polite, always helpful, always calm, maybe too calm. Vexathari remembered talking to a human trader named Sarah Kim 6 months ago. Pirates had attacked her ship and stolen half her cargo. When she reported the incident to station security, she had shown no anger, no desire for revenge. She had simply said, "These things happen. I hope they needed the medicine more than my buyers did." But later, Vexathari had seen her in the station's bar. She was sitting alone, staring at a photo of what looked like human children. Her hands were completely still. But Vexathari had noticed something. The metal table in front of her had small dents in it, as if someone with incredible strength had been pressing their fingers into it without realizing it. The communication system beeped, pulling Vexathari from his thoughts. An emergency broadcast was starting. All species representatives were being called to an urgent council meeting. Vexathari and Zumdar watched the announcement. A Karthul Empire warship had captured a human colony vessel. The ship contained 10,000 humans, including many families with children. The Karthul were demanding that Earth surrender 3 star systems in exchange for the prisoners' lives. Typical, Zumdar said. The Karthul pick on the weakest species. The humans will probably give up the systems without a fight. Vexathari wasn't so sure. He watched the footage of the captured ship. The humans on board looked scared, but not panicked. Even the children seemed strangely calm for prisoners. Something was wrong with this picture. But Vexathari couldn't put his finger on what. The emergency council would meet in 6 hours. Representatives from all major species would attend to discuss the crisis. Vexathari decided to watch the meeting. He wanted to see how the humans would respond to this threat. As he prepared his observation equipment, Vexathari felt something he rarely experienced. Curiosity mixed with unease. For 3 years, he had been trying to understand humans. Soon, he suspected, he might get his answer. He just wasn't sure he would like what he learned. The council chamber was packed. Representatives from every major species in the Galactic Union had gathered for the emergency meeting. Vexathari sat in the observation gallery, his recording equipment ready. Below him, the great circular room buzzed with worried voices. The Karthul representative stood at the central podium. War leader Thoknul was a massive creature, covered in bone-like armor. His voice boomed through the chamber. "The human colony ship belongs to the Karthul Empire now," he announced. 10,000 humans are our guests. They will remain safe as long as Earth surrenders the Vega, Centauri, and Proxima systems to us within 72 hours. Angry voices filled the chamber. The Broktor delegation stood up, shouting about honor. The crystal beings from Zethkar Prime clicked their disapproval. Even the peaceful Velnari traders seemed upset. But Vexathari was only watching one group. The human delegation sat in complete silence. Ambassador Chen Weilin looked exactly the same as always. Neat uniform, calm expression, hands folded neatly in his lap. The 3 other humans with him showed the same strange composure. No shouting, no demands for justice, no visible anger at all. This was wrong. Vexathari had studied enough species to know how they reacted to threats. Fear made creatures defensive. Anger made them aggressive. Desperation made them unpredictable. But humans facing the capture of 10,000 of their people looked like they were attending a boring trade meeting. "The floor recognizes the human representative," announced Council Speaker Velrani. Ambassador Chen stood up slowly. He walked to the podium with measured steps. When he reached the speaking platform, he paused for a moment and looked directly at war leader Thoknul. "Thank you, honored speaker," Chen said in his soft voice. "The Earth government requests 72 hours to consider this situation and consult with our leadership." The chamber erupted in surprised voices. The Broktor delegation leader, General Cax Moore, stood up. 72 hours? He roared. "Your people are prisoners. This is the time for action, not consideration." Chen turned to face the Broktor general. We appreciate your concern, General Caxmore. However, decisions of this magnitude require careful thought. We hope this matter can be resolved through peaceful dialogue. War leader Thoknul's bone plates clattered in what Vexthari recognized as Carthul laughter. Of course the weak humans want to talk. While you consider, we will begin questioning your people. Perhaps that will help you think faster. We hope that won't be necessary, Chen replied. His voice stayed perfectly level. But we understand your position. 72 hours. That was it. No threats, no demands, no passionate speeches about justice or freedom. The human ambassador simply nodded to the council and returned to his seat. Vexthari watched the other species' reactions. Confusion was the most common expression. The Velnari representative whispered something to her aide. The Zethkari delegation shook their heads in their analytical way, but Vexthari was focused on details others missed. Ambassador Chen's breathing was perfectly steady. His heart rate, visible through the thin skin of his neck, never changed. His hands never trembled. For someone whose people were in mortal danger, he showed remarkable control. Too much control. After the council session ended, Vexthari followed the human delegation at a distance. They walked through the station corridors without urgency. They stopped at a communication booth to send a message to Earth. The conversation was brief and conducted in quiet voices. Vexthari activated his hearing enhancement and caught fragments of their talk. Confirmed the timeline. Assets are positioned. Remind them about Protocol 7. Understand the consequences. Protocol 7? Vexthari had never heard humans mention any protocols before. He made a note to research this later. The humans split up after their communication session. Ambassador Chen went to the diplomatic quarters. The other 3 humans went to different parts of the station. One went to the technical sections. Another headed for the commercial district. The third went toward the docking bays. This struck Vexthari as odd behavior for a delegation facing a crisis. Shouldn't they stay together? Shouldn't they be frantically trying to contact their government or military? Instead, they moved like they had planned this response years ago. Over the next day, Vexthari observed the humans carefully. They maintained their normal routines. Ambassador Chen attended scheduled meetings with other diplomats. He discussed trade agreements and cultural exchange programs as if nothing had happened. When other species expressed sympathy about the captured humans, Chen thanked them politely and changed the subject. But Vexthari noticed other things. Human merchant ships in the area began leaving on routine supply runs. The Morning Star, which had been docked for repairs, suddenly completed its maintenance and departed for medical deliveries to outer colonies. More strangely, several human civilian vessels had arrived at the station over the past few days. They claimed to be researchers, tourists, or small traders, but Vexthari noticed they all had unusually powerful communication arrays for civilian ships. On the second day, war leader Thoknul made good on his threat. Video broadcasts from the captured colony ship began appearing on all communication networks. Carthul soldiers questioned human prisoners, demanding information about Earth's defenses and colony locations. Vexthari expected this to break the humans' strange calm. Instead, Ambassador Chen watched the broadcasts with the same steady expression. When reporters asked for his reaction, he simply said, "We are disappointed by this development. We continue to hope for a peaceful resolution." Disappointed. That was the word he used. Not angry. Not outraged. Not heartbroken. Disappointed. Vexthari began to feel genuinely disturbed. He had spent 3 years studying humans, convinced they were simply peaceful by nature. But their reaction to this crisis wasn't peaceful. It was something else entirely. That evening, Vexthari was reviewing his observations when Zumdar visited his quarters. "The humans will surrender," Zumdar predicted. "They have no choice. They're too weak to fight the Carthul Empire." "I'm not so sure," Vexthari replied. "Come now, look at the evidence. They've never won a military conflict. They avoid fights. They pay bribes to prevent wars. They're clearly a species that evolved as prey animals." Vexthari pulled up his behavioral analysis charts. But look at this data. Their stress hormone levels don't match their behavior. When other species face existential threats, their biology shows panic responses, heart rate increases, hormone spikes, erratic behavior patterns. And the humans? Their biology shows they're completely relaxed. Either they don't understand the threat, or what? Or they're not worried because they already know how this will end. Zoomdar's crystalline skin flickered with confusion. That makes no sense. How could they know the outcome of an ongoing crisis? Vex Thari stared at his data. That was exactly the question that kept him awake at night. How could a supposedly peaceful species remain so calm when facing their worst nightmare? As the 72-hour deadline approached, Vex Thari prepared his equipment to record the human's final decision. He suspected he was about to witness something important. He just didn't know what. The countdown had begun. In 18 hours, the humans would either surrender 3 star systems or watch their people suffer. Vex Thari wondered which choice they would make. More importantly, he wondered why he had the growing feeling that neither option was what the humans had actually planned. The 72 hours were up. Vex Thari sat in the observation gallery as the emergency council reconvened. The chamber was quieter today. Representatives spoke in hushed voices. Everyone knew they were about to witness either humanity's surrender or the beginning of a massacre. War leader Thoknul stood at his podium, bone plates gleaming under the lights. The time for human weakness has ended, he announced. Where is their surrender? Ambassador Chen Wei-Lin rose from his seat. He walked to the speaking platform with the same measured pace as before. His uniform was perfectly pressed. His hands were steady. His expression remained calm. Honored Council, Chen began. Earth has carefully considered the Karthal Empire's demands. The chamber held its breath. We asked you to release our people, Chen continued. You chose not to. We are disappointed. War leader Thoknul's bone plates clattered with laughter. Disappointed? Your people will suffer for your weakness, human. Chen looked directly at the Karthal leader. Perhaps, but probably not in the way you think. Something in his voice made the chamber go completely silent. Vex Thari leaned forward. His recording equipment focused on the human ambassador's face. For the first time in 3 years of observation, Chen's expression had changed. The polite smile was gone. What remained was something that made Vex's Thari's skin crawl. Chen's face showed no anger, no hatred, no emotion at all. It was the expression of someone who had already decided what was going to happen, and was simply waiting for it to begin. What do you mean? War leader Thoknul demanded. I mean, Chen said quietly, that you should have accepted our first offer to resolve this peacefully. The chamber's communication system suddenly activated. Emergency signals flooded in from across Karthal space. Vex Thari watched the main display screen, as reports appeared faster than anyone could read them. Karthal military base at Sector 7 has stopped responding. Explosion reported at Karthal Naval Headquarters. Karthal Supply Depot at Rigel Prime is gone. Karthal Communication Array has been destroyed. The reports kept coming. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. Every major Karthal military installation across 3 star systems was either destroyed or under attack. All at the same time. War leader Thoknul stared at the reports in shock. Impossible. Our bases are heavily defended. No fleet could have gotten close without us detecting it. Ambassador Chen checked his watch. Actually, our forces have been in position for quite some time. What forces? Thoknul roared. Humans don't have a military fleet. Chen smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. That's what we wanted everyone to believe. More reports flooded in. But these were different. Video feeds from the captured colony ship began broadcasting across the chamber. Vex Thari expected to see human prisoners being executed in revenge. Instead, he saw something that broke his understanding of everything. The captured humans were not prisoners. They were soldiers, heavily armed soldiers who were systematically taking control of the Karthal ship. The children, Vex Thari had seen in earlier broadcasts, were removing disguises, revealing themselves to be adult military personnel. The colony ship was never captured, Chen explained to the stunned council. It was a trap. War leader Thoknul's bone plates had stopped clattering. But we detected human civilian signals, family communications, children crying for their parents. Good actors, Chen replied. We've been planning this operation for 2 years. Ever since your empire began making threats against human colonies. Vexthari felt sick. Everything he had observed about humans was wrong. Completely wrong. You want to know about human civilization? Chen asked the chamber. Let me tell you what we really are. The main display changed to show a star map. Hundreds of points of light appeared across the galaxy. Each point represented a human ship. These are not exploration vessels, Chen said. These are not trading ships. These are military units that have been positioned throughout the galaxy for the past 50 years. More lights appeared on the map, thousands of them. These are our actual colonies, not the small farming settlements everyone knows about. These are military production facilities, research stations, and naval bases. The map zoomed in on specific systems. Vexthari saw massive shipyards hidden in asteroid fields. Weapons testing facilities disguised as mining operations. Fleet bases that looked like civilian space stations. When humans joined the Galactic Union 50 years ago, Chen continued, we were not the primitive species everyone believed. We had been watching you all for centuries, learning your languages, studying your military capabilities, preparing. Chen continued. The chamber erupted in panicked voices. Representatives demanded explanations. Some called for immediate action against humanity. Others began calculating whether their own species might be targets. Chen waited for the noise to die down before continuing. We chose peace, he said simply. We could have conquered the galaxy when we arrived. Instead, we decided to see if we could coexist with you all. For 50 years, we gave you that chance. He gestured toward war leader Thoknul. The Karthul Empire made the mistake of threatening human children. That was unacceptable. On the display screen, new video feeds appeared. Karthul warships were surrendering across their empire. Not because they were outnumbered, but because they were completely outmatched. Human vessels that had been hiding as civilian ships revealed weapon systems that were decades ahead of anything the galaxy had seen. But the most shocking thing was how precise the human attacks were. No civilian targets were hit. No unnecessary destruction occurred. The humans simply and efficiently eliminated every military threat the Karthul posed. This is impossible, whispered the Velnari representative. How did you hide all of this? We didn't hide it, Chen replied. You all simply saw what you expected to see. Weak, emotional creatures who avoided conflict. It never occurred to anyone that we might be avoiding conflict because we were so overwhelmingly superior that fighting would be unfair. Vexthari realized his hands were shaking. 3 years of research, 3 years of careful observation. All of it worthless, because he had been looking at the wrong things. The humans hadn't been peaceful because they were weak. They had been peaceful because they were so strong that they didn't need to prove it to anyone. What happens now? Asked Council Speaker Velrani. Chen looked around the chamber at all the species representatives. Now you know who we really are. The question is, what you plan to do with that knowledge. He straightened his uniform and prepared to leave the podium. The Karthul Empire no longer poses a threat to anyone. Their military capability has been eliminated. Their civilian population is unharmed. They will be placed under human protection until they can rebuild their society without the desire to conquer others. And the rest of us? Asked General Caxmore from the Brocktor delegation. Chen paused. The rest of you continue your lives as before. We prefer peace. Remember? We always have. But now you know the price of threatening human children. As Ambassador Chen walked back to his seat, Vexthari stared at his data screens. Every observation he had made suddenly took on new meaning. The controlled breathing wasn't natural calm, it was military discipline. The steady heart rates weren't peaceful nature, they were combat training. The polite responses to insults weren't weakness, they were the confidence of someone who could destroy their enemy but chose not to. Humans weren't peaceful prey animals hiding among predators. They were apex predators pretending to be prey animals to avoid having to hurt anyone, and the most terrifying part was that they were very good at pretending. Vexthari could not sleep. For 3 days after the council meeting, he sat in his quarters staring at data screens. Everything he thought he knew about humans was wrong. Everything. The news feeds from across the galaxy painted a picture that grew more disturbing by the hour. The Carthul Empire had been completely dismantled in less than 6 hours. Not destroyed, dismantled. Every military asset eliminated with surgical precision. Every government facility occupied by human forces. Every war leader captured alive and unharmed. But it was the scale of the operation that truly frightened Vexthari. Computer, display human ship movements from the past 72 hours, he commanded. The holographic display showed the galaxy with movement trails of every detected vessel. What Vexthari saw made his breathing stop. Hundreds of ships that had been classified as civilian had revealed themselves as military vessels. Exploration craft became battleships. Research stations transformed into command centers. Mining operations turned out to be weapons factories. The humans had been preparing for this moment for decades, maybe longer. Vexthari pulled up specific battle reports. The human attack on Carthul military base Theta 7 had lasted exactly 14 minutes. Security footage showed human soldiers moving through the facility with perfect knowledge of its layout. They knew where every important system was located. They knew which officers to capture. They knew which civilians to avoid. How long had humans been watching the Carthul? How long had they been watching everyone else? A communication signal interrupted his research. Zoomdar appeared on his screen, his crystalline features flickering with agitation. Vexthari, have you seen the latest intelligence reports? Which ones? The analysis of human technology captured during the operation. Our scientists have been studying their weapons, their ships, their communication systems, and their technology is not just advanced, it's impossibly advanced. They have energy sources we don't understand. Weapon systems that violate known physics. Communication methods that work faster than light without any detectable mechanism. Vexthari felt cold. How is that possible? That's what everyone is asking. The humans have been among us for 50 years, sharing some of their technology freely. Medical advances, agricultural improvements, basic engineering. We thought we understood their capabilities. But we were only seeing what they wanted us to see. Exactly. And here's the terrifying part. The technology they shared with us? According to our analysis, it's primitive compared to what they actually possess. The humans gave us their outdated equipment, and we thought it was revolutionary. Vexthari pulled up the files on human gifts to other species. Medicines that had saved millions of lives. Energy systems that had ended resource wars. Agricultural techniques that had ended famines. All of it was apparently considered obsolete by human standards. Zoomdar, run a search on historical records. Look for any mentions of unexplained technological advances in the past century. What am I looking for specifically? Anytime a species made a sudden breakthrough in science or engineering. Anytime someone discovered something they couldn't explain. The results appeared within minutes. Dozens of entries. The Velnari had discovered new mining techniques that doubled their efficiency. The Broktor had developed stronger armor alloys using methods no one could explain. Even the Zethkari had made advances in computer processing that their own scientists called mysteriously inspired. Computer, cross-reference these discoveries with known human presence in those systems, Vexthari ordered. Every single breakthrough had occurred in areas where humans had coincidentally been present. Trading missions, cultural exchanges, scientific conferences. The humans had been secretly advancing other species' technology for decades. Why would they do that? What possible benefit could come from making their neighbors stronger? Vexthari realized the answer, and it terrified him. The humans were making sure other species could survive. They were preparing the galaxy for something. But for what? New reports continued flooding in about the Carthul situation. The Empire's surrender had been complete and immediate. But the aftermath revealed even more disturbing details about human capabilities. Video feeds showed human occupation forces taking control of Carthul's cities. But these weren't normal soldiers. They moved with perfect coordination. They spoke fluent Carthul language. They knew the names of local officials, the locations of important sites, the customs and traditions of each region. How long had humans been infiltrating Carthul's society? How many other species had they infiltrated? Vexthari. The communication system announced an incoming call. Ambassador Chen Weilin requests a private meeting. Vexthari's hands froze over his controls. Why would the human ambassador want to speak with him? Did humans know he had been studying them? Had they been watching him, just as he had been watching them? Send the ambassador to conference room 7. Vexthari replied. 20 minutes later, Vexthari sat across from the human who had shattered his understanding of the galaxy. Ambassador Chen looked exactly the same as always. Calm, polite, unremarkable. But now, Vexthari could see the careful control behind every gesture. The precise way Chen moved his hands. The calculated rhythm of his breathing. The way his eyes never stopped analyzing everything in the room. Thank you for agreeing to meet, Chen said. I understand you've been studying my species for some time. There was no point in denying it. Yes. What have you concluded? Vexthari considered his words carefully. That everything I thought I knew was wrong. Chen smiled. It was the same polite expression Vexthari had seen hundreds of times. But now he could see the intelligence behind it. The planning. The careful consideration of every possible outcome. Not everything, Chen said. You correctly identified that humans are different from other species. You noticed patterns that others missed. You asked the right questions. But I reached the wrong conclusions. You reached the conclusions we wanted you to reach. That's not the same thing. Vexthari felt a chill. How long have you known I was studying you? Since the day you first accessed our files 3 years ago, we monitor all research into human behavior. It helps us understand how well our disguise is working. Disguise? The peaceful trader image. The weak, emotional species that avoids conflict. It took considerable effort to maintain that impression. Chen leaned forward slightly. But you started noticing inconsistencies. The biological markers that didn't match our behavior. The technological capabilities that didn't fit our supposed development level. The way we responded to threats. Vexthari nodded slowly. Why are you telling me this? Because the disguise is no longer necessary. The Carthul forced us to reveal ourselves. Other species now know what we're capable of. The question is, what happens next? What do you mean? Some species will try to form alliances with us out of fear. Others will attempt to build weapons to defend against us. A few might even try to attack us before we grow stronger. Chen's expression remained calm. All of these responses are predictable and manageable. Manageable? We've been modeling possible galactic responses to this revelation for 30 years. Every likely scenario has been planned for. We know how each species will react. We've prepared appropriate responses. Vexthari realized his hands were shaking again. The humans hadn't just been hiding their military power. They had been running psychological operations on the entire galaxy for decades. Every species, every government, every individual leader had been studied, analyzed, and categorized. Why are you telling me this? He asked again. Because you represent something important. Objective analysis. Scientific curiosity. The desire to understand rather than to judge or fear. Chen paused. We need people like you to help other species adjust to the new reality, which is that humanity is not going anywhere. We will continue to be members of the Galactic Union. We will continue to prefer peace and cooperation. But everyone now knows the cost of threatening our children. Chen stood to leave. We hope the galaxy can accept this new understanding and move forward. We really do prefer peace. As the human ambassador walked toward the door, Vexthari called out. What if some species can't accept it? Chen paused without turning around. Then, we'll be disappointed. But we won't be surprised. After Chen left, Vexthari sat alone with his thoughts. The humans had unleashed their wrath on the Karthul Empire and destroyed it in hours. But that wasn't the most terrifying part. The most terrifying part was that they had been capable of doing it all along. For 50 years, humanity had possessed the power to conquer the galaxy. Instead, they had chosen to heal the sick, feed the hungry, and advance civilization, until someone threatened their children. Now, Vexthari understood why the humans had seemed so controlled. They weren't hiding weakness. They were restraining strength that could reshape the galaxy, and the scariest part was that they were still restraining it. 6 months had passed since the fall of the Karthul Empire. Vexthari stood in his quarters, looking out at the ships docked around Nexus Prime. Everything looked the same as before, but nothing was the same. The galaxy had changed. Not because humans had revealed their military power, but because everyone now understood what that power meant. Fear had been the first response. Species across the galaxy had panicked when they realized how completely humans had deceived them. Emergency military buildups began. Alliance treaties were signed in desperate attempts to create combined forces that might stand against human technology. All of it was useless, and everyone knew it. Vexthari pulled up the latest intelligence reports. Every species that had tried to develop weapons to match human capabilities had failed. The Braktor had attempted to build energy shields based on captured human equipment. The shields had worked perfectly until the humans sent a polite message explaining 36 ways to disable them. The Velnari Collective had tried to form a military alliance with 8 other species. Their combined fleets represented thousands of warships and millions of trained soldiers. Then, human intelligence had quietly delivered detailed files showing they had been tracking every ship movement, monitoring every communication, and predicting every strategic decision for years. The message was clear. Resistance was not just futile, it was already obsolete. But something unexpected had happened after the initial panic. The galaxy had begun to stabilize, not through military deterrence, but through understanding. Humans had not conquered anyone after defeating the Karthul. They had not demanded tribute or territory. They had not imposed their will on other species. They had simply returned to their previous behavior, trading, healing, building, and exploring. The only difference was that now everyone knew they were choosing to be peaceful. Vexthari had spent the past 6 months rewriting his analysis of human civilization. His new report was thousands of pages long, but the core conclusion was simple. Humans were the most dangerous species in the galaxy precisely because they did not want to be dangerous. Computer, display comparative analysis of human versus galactic military capabilities, he commanded. The holographic display showed the results of his research. Human military technology was not just superior, it was incomparable. Their weakest weapons could destroy the strongest ships of other species. Their defensive systems could withstand anything the rest of the galaxy could produce. Their intelligence gathering was so comprehensive that they probably knew what most leaders were thinking before those leaders did. But the most important discovery was this. Humans had possessed this overwhelming advantage for their entire 50 years in the Galactic Union. They could have conquered everyone on their first day. Instead, they had chosen to pretend to be weak. Why would anyone do that? Vexthari had interviewed dozens of humans over the past months, trying to understand their psychology. The answer he found disturbed him more than their weapons ever could. Humans remembered their own history. They knew what their species was capable of when it stopped restraining itself. They had fought wars on their home planet that had nearly destroyed their entire civilization. They understood the cost of unchecked aggression. So when they reached the stars and found a galaxy full of species that reminded them of their younger selves, they had made a choice. They would be the guardians that their own species had never had. They would watch and protect and guide, but only from the shadows, until someone crossed the line. The Karthul had crossed that line by threatening human children. But even then, humans had shown restraint. They had eliminated the Empire's military power without harming civilians. They had captured leaders alive. They had occupied territory only long enough to ensure it would not threaten anyone again. This was not the behavior of conquerors. This was the behavior of reluctant parents disciplining a dangerous child. A communication signal interrupted his thoughts. Vexthari, you have a visitor. He opened the door to find a young human female he had never seen before. She was small, barely reaching his shoulder, with short dark hair and civilian clothes. Nothing about her appearance suggested military training or special importance. Dr. Vexthari? I'm Lieutenant Sarah Kim, Human Intelligence Division. Vexthari's breathing stopped. He remembered that name. Sarah Kim was the traitor, whose ship had been attacked by pirates 6 months ago. The woman who had shown no anger, only concern for whether the pirates needed the stolen medicine. You're not a traitor, he said. I am a traitor. I'm also a military intelligence officer. Most humans serve in multiple roles. She smiled the same polite smile all humans used. May I come in? They sat across from each other in his small quarters. Lieutenant Kim looked around at his research displays with apparent interest. Impressive work, she said. Your analysis of human psychology is quite accurate. How long have you been watching me? Since the day you started studying us. But don't take it personally. We watch everyone who shows unusual interest in human behavior. Why are you here? Kim leaned back in her chair. Because you've spent 6 months trying to understand something that most species never figure out. You want to know why we choose restraint when we could choose dominance. Yes, the answer is simple. We've been the Karthul before. On our own world. Thousands of years ago. We were the species that conquered and enslaved and destroyed. We know what that path leads to. She gestured toward the window and the ships beyond. When we found this galaxy, we saw dozens of species making the same mistakes we had made. The Karthul with their empire building. The Braktor with their honor wars. The Zethkari with their cold logic that ignores suffering. So you decided to guide us? We decided to give you the chance to be better than we were. We shared our medical knowledge, so species would stop dying from preventable diseases. We gave you agricultural techniques, so famines would end. We provided energy technologies so resource wars would become unnecessary. Kim stood and walked to the window. For 50 years, we watched and hoped. Most species did become better. They formed the Galactic Union. They began cooperating instead of fighting. They developed art and science and philosophy. But some didn't change. Some didn't change. The Karthul kept building their empire. They kept enslaving other species. They kept planning larger and larger wars. She turned back to face him. When they threatened human children, they forced us to become what we had hoped never to be again. And what is that? The strongest species in the galaxy. The species that others must fear. Vexthari thought about this for a long moment. Will you go back to hiding now? Kim shook her head. We can't. The secret is out. Every species knows what we're capable of now. So we have to find a new way forward. Which is, we become the guardians openly. We stop pretending to be weak and start admitting we're strong. But we use that strength the way we always have. To protect those who can't protect themselves. She moved toward the door, then paused. There's something else you should know. Something we haven't told the Galactic Council yet. What? We're not the only ones. There are other species out there. Beyond the current boundaries of known space. Some of them make the Karthul look like peaceful farmers. Some of them have technology that challenges even our capabilities. Vexthari felt cold. How do you know? Because we've been fighting them for centuries. Keeping them away from this galaxy. Protecting all of you from threats you never knew existed. Kim opened the door. That's why we needed to be strong and secret. That's why we couldn't risk galactic wars weakening everyone. And that's why we revealed ourselves now. Because those threats are getting stronger, and we need the galaxy united if we're going to face them together. After she left, Vexthari sat alone with this new information. Humans had not just been hiding their strength from the galaxy, they had been using that strength to protect the galaxy from enemies no one else knew about. For centuries, while other species worried about trade disputes and territorial conflicts, Humans had been standing guard against cosmic horrors. They had been the shield that allowed peaceful civilization to develop. And when the Carthul had threatened human children, the children of the Guardians, they had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. Vexthari began to understand something profound. Human strength was not measured by their weapons or their technology. It was measured by their willingness to use that power only when they absolutely had to. For 50 years, they had chosen peace when they could have chosen war. They had chosen protection when they could have chosen conquest. They had chosen to heal when they could have chosen to harm. That was not weakness. That was the strongest choice any species could make. Vexthari looked out at the human ships docked around the station. They looked exactly the same as they always had. Simple, clean, unremarkable vessels crewed by polite, helpful people. But now he knew the truth. Those ships were fortresses. Those polite people were warriors. And their greatest weapon was not their technology or their numbers. Their greatest weapon was their decision to use their power only to protect those who could not protect themselves, even when it meant protecting other species from themselves. The galaxy would never be the same. But maybe, Vexthari thought, that was exactly what it needed.